I just recently learned the term LAT, living apart together. What is this, with LAT relationships? What are they and could they be for you, Vicki? Thank you so much for joining us today on Second Act TV. I am so happy to welcome a new content expert to Second Act today, award-winning journalist and author Vicki Larson. Vicki, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so delighted to be here.
Vicki is the author of Not Too Old for That: How Women Are Changing the Story of Aging. Boy, is that a topic for Second Act TV. I mean, that's what we do here. Life after 50, how we embrace the aging process or not. I found you researching a topic about how we look at relationships as we start over again, a position that so many find ourselves in, including you and me. And I just recently learned the term LAT, living apart together. A couple of viewers actually suggested this as a topic, and that's how I found you. So let's talk about that. What is this, with LAT relationships? What are they, and could they be for you, Vicki?
Well, so LAT, or living apart together, relationships are two people who are in a romantic, sexual, committed relationship, but they don't share the same roof. And that really throws a lot of people off. Like, wait a minute. Why would you want to, let's say, get married and not live together? Like, that's not even being married. But it is. And there's a lot of pros to that arrangement. And what is fascinating to me is that it's a growing lifestyle choice, especially for people at a certain age, at midlife and beyond. Yeah. And the odd thing is that my mom did it, and she did it. She's a 1950s classic suburban mother. And when her daughters, my sister, me, went out of the house, she left my dad in New York, moved down to Florida where my sister was living, bought herself a condo, got herself a job, and created this life down there, separate from my dad. But he'd come down once a month to visit. And it wasn't really until I was at midlife when I said, Mom, the heck was that about? And she said, I'd had enough. But that isn't the reason why you should or shouldn't have a living part
Well,
together.
yeah, let me interject one thing. And this is what's so interesting is that, this living apart together, it's usually seen as some sort of necessity because people are maybe, you're transferred with your job. You both have jobs that you don't want to let go, I mean, that's one reason, the long distance thing, but it's becoming a choice now, and not necessarily even that you even have to be married. It could be a committed relationship, to
Oh,
where you're totally committed but you don't want to live in the same under the same roof,
yeah, that's true. Yes, for younger people, and I mean people in their 20s and 30s, maybe just out of college, first job, it is often that they're not living together, but it's not necessarily a choice.
Hmm.
I think a lot of younger people actually do want to live together. It reduces your monthly expenses, and you want to be with your boo all the time. But more older people are interested in that, especially if, let's say, they're divorced or widowed, and they're now at midlife, and that script of what a relationship looks like isn't so clear cut.
Right.
When you're younger, very much it looks like you fall in love, you live together, maybe you get married, have kids, that whole thing. But when you've had that already, then you say, well, how do I want this relationship to look like? And do I want to maybe have to move because this person I like or I'm in love with lives far away from me, and I've built my community here? So it really kind of works well for people at midlife and older.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it turns out, like, I kind of I guess I'm a LAT. We kind of fell into that because we live an hour apart, and other circumstances that we haven't actually moved in. We own a house together, but we have our own separate residences. And when this was pointed out to me, it's like, this is such an interesting conversation because I don't know about you, but I know I get from my friends or well-meaning other people, is there something wrong? I mean, you've been together 10 years. Is what's wrong? And there's nothing wrong. And that's part of, I think, the stereotype, or do we need to keep accepting what a relationship should look like at this age?
Well, that's true, yes. And anytime you deviate from what we think you should be doing, it's confusing for people. You love each other. Why don't you want to live together? Or any of the other variations of how people are rearranging their romantic sexual lives at this age. It is confusing. And you do have to kind of push against that narrative that it is only one way of being. It really works well for a lot of people who, like I say, maybe have their own home and they don't want to give that up. Maybe that's the family home. They raise their children there. They've built a community there. So it's saying, oh, I can still have this romantic relationship with someone, and we can live separately, and we can be just as committed and loving and caring as if we were under the same roof. And according to a lot of the science, actually maybe even have a better relationship.
I was just going to say, I think that's one of the big pros is that when you're not together 24/7 and deal with, and I think you say that in your book as well as or your article, the minutia of everyday life, getting, you don't take each other for granted as much because there is some, you miss each other and then you come together for a reason. That is a big pro as long as both people are on the same page. I think that's one of the cons is some one person please, going along with it to please the other. Maybe that's something you have to evaluate.
Yeah, anytime you're in a relationship and you're not on the same page about things, I don't care what it is, that's going to be a source of conflict. So, and that it can be how you choose to raise your children, or where you want to live, or whose job dominates where you're going to go, or how we spend our money. So, I mean, couples are being in a relationship is complicated just from the get-go because you've got two separate people. So absolutely, you need to both be on the same page about why you're doing it and that you're choosing to do it. If you're not both choosing to do it, then it's going to be a little uncomfortable. Well, it's not going to work well. There'll be resentments. But yes, when, a lot of times when we are living under the same roof with someone, we're not really engaging with them. And a lot of the things that maybe they do in their little life and in their lifestyle is maybe irks you,
Yeah.
which, right? Just the way they do this or the way they do that, which, probably in the beginning of the relationship you thought was very cute. And then, 10 or 15 years later, it's like, no, that's not so cute anymore. So you don't really have to deal with that and you're very much more intentional about how you're going to spend your time when you don't live with each other all the time.
Right.
And I find that as a pro,
Right.
that we're choosing to be together, and this is what we're going to do. And even if it's not doing anything, you're just being conscious about it and much more appreciative, I think, of this precious time with this loved one of yours. And I think one thing we've learned during the pandemic is that there's so much uncertainty and chaos in the world. And people who live together forced in quarantine were having a hard time,
Yeah.
as were people who were totally 100% isolated.
Yes.
So living apart together is kind of the best of both worlds in that you're not with them 24/7, but you
Right.
also can be with them. So you're not alone.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, how much space do you want? I think it's one of the cons that if it's too far apart, like if it's once a month, that there's the chance that one or both of you can develop feelings for someone else, maybe. Or, if that might be the con, you have to kind of think about it. I know, like for me, it's just a few days every week, and that works out great. And incidentally, and I think this is important, you point this out, that this sounds like something a man would choose. And according to the statistics, it's the women that want this more so than men, right?
And it's generally for women our age. This are generally women who have done a lot of the caregiving and all of the household management. And I know that sounds very gendered, and that isn't the case for every
Right.
family, but it tends to be pretty gendered in that way. And now, and not everyone has children, but if you have children and they are out of the house and you're empty nesters, there's a lot of older women who say, I'm done with that.
Right.
I want to have a companion and maybe a sexual partner, and I don't want to be the manager of everything.
Yeah.
Because it's exhausting, and we've already been there, done that.
Yeah.
I wanted to get back to what you said about time spent together or apart, because that is an individual thing that the couple has to decide.
Right.
But bringing up the fact that one could become emotionally or physically attached to someone else, that already happens in committed relationships or married people who are living together. I mean, that already happens.
Good point.
Potentially happen more because you're not monitoring what your partner is doing all the time. It could, but the thing is, it's not that you're living apart. It's who are you living apart with? It comes down to the person.
Yeah.
So if your partner is going to fall in love with someone else or have a dalliance with someone else, they're likely to have done that even if you were living together.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's a great point. And that's almost, by me bringing that up, almost a little bit playing into the stereotype. What we're trying to bust. Well, it's an interesting conversation. To our viewers, we've bantered back and forth. What do you think? Is this something that could work for you? I can't wait to hear the comments on this. Again, it hits home for me. I didn't realize this was a thing. And it makes sense. So Vicki, to close out this segment, what would you like to leave with our viewers on this whole topic of living apart together?
Well, it's not for everybody, and that's very important to know. If you are a person who has to have someone around all the time, or if you have trust issues, this or that, probably won't work. If you are a person who likes to lead an independent life and still want love and commitment, that will work. I think one of the biggest things people bring up is the cost. Why? Oh, it's so expensive to maintain two separate households. And that is true. And you have to question, are financial decisions going to run your emotional, sexual, physical relationships? And also, if living apart and giving each other breathing space would save your relationship, if you are married or in a committed relationship and you break up, you're going to have to live apart anyway.
Right.
So if that would actually save your relationship, why wouldn't you do that right away? So it's just a thing for people to think about, how they really want to structure their life.
Yeah. Great point. Vicki, thank you so much. I love talking with you. We will link to your book, Not Too Old for That. Do check it out. It's terrific. It's almost like a PhD thesis that reads like funnier than shit. So I recommend it. You will love it, especially if you like this topic. So thank you again for joining us, Vicki, and I look forward to our next conversation on Second Act TV.
Thank you so much, Silky.
If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe to our channel. The button is right here. Just click on through to YouTube, and when you see the little bell right next to the subscribe button, hit that too, and we'll notify you every time we launch a new video. See you next time.